saying, in fact, I know you have, if there's a will, there's a way. We've heard it all of our lives, that most of us, and you know it's true. If a person really and truly wants to do something, he can do it. Anything within reason. For example, a lot of us probably, or some of us, have a typewriter, and we've got the hunt and peck system, haven't we? You can always tell anyone that types by the hunt and peck system, all you got to do is take it out and hold it up to light. And you can see every period knocked completely through it. Because you hit it real hard, see? Well, now, you say I would give anything to have the touch system. And you know, we know people, we've seen people who can just nearly set the typewriter on fire. It goes so fast. And you sit there and you'd envy that person so much. You said, give anything to learn to type that way. Well, let me ask you a question. Are you still hunting and pecking? Then you really didn't want to learn anything any better. Because you really didn't have the will. You could learn the touch system. So it's just to illustrate that things that are seemingly impossible, brothers, we can overcome it if we've really got the will or the determination to get it done. You know, open your Bibles, if you would, to Proverbs chapter 6. Now, here we find where it mentioned about some little insects. Of course, you know what they are. They're the ants. And oftentimes the ants are referred to not only in the Bible, but by various men in the know, because they're a very industrious little creature. They're hard workers. They get seemingly impossible tasks accomplished. And you notice who the Bible says to go to those little ants to. It says to go to the ant, you lazy one. See there? Lazy ones. It says, go to the ant, you lazy one, see its ways and become wise, although it has no commander, officer, or ruler. It prepares its food even in the summer. It has gathered its food supplies even in the harvest. The little ant. So it says, you lazy folks, go and watch the little ant, and you'll become wise. You can learn from it. You know there are only two different kinds of ants. Busy ones and dead ones. Showing that if they're not busy, they're dead. So they're workers, and that's why the Bible refers to them many times. But you know, one time there's a group of scientists, and they were trying to prove that the Bible really wasn't true, that the ant really didn't, you know, put that much effort into accomplishing things. So to prove this to be a fact, they built a room. It was 10 by 10 by 10, 10 foot wide or square, and 10 foot tall. And the scientists built it out of brand new lumber. It never had the opportunity of having any syrup or gravy splashed on the walls there, or the floor. And they set all their instruments up and they backed out. But now before they did that, they put a table right in the center of that room. Now on that table they put a tub full of water. And in that tub full of water they put a three-legged table. They set it right in there. Well, I can't quite hold 3 fingers there, but something like that. And on top of that table they put another three-legged table. On top of that table, another three-legged table. That carried it about 3 foot from the ceiling. And on top of the third table, they put a big chocolate cake. It's getting better, isn't it? And so they had their instruments set up and they waited. So in a little while, here come about 3 or 4 scout ants. And those scout ants, they didn't just come in and start looking all around trying to find something. Because of how they had been equipped, they knew something good was in that room. So here they walked to the leg of the table, and they crawled up that table leg and up on the table. Then they went up the edge of that tub, right up to the top, right up where the water's just about to fall over. And they looked out across that water, and it looked like an ocean to the little old black ant about that high. You know, a little teeny, about that big, I guess he was. And there it was, 2 or 3 of them, you know, around the edge of that, the lip of that tub. And they looked out across that water, that table leg, because they knew there was some sweets up on top. But they cannot swim. Well, scientists have proven beyond any doubt that ants has a way of communicating with one another, some radio wave or something of that nature. So anyway, they tried it out here that day, I guess, because these little ants, you know, they're up on that tub, you know, and they face the door back, and the little old feelers up here go doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Or whatever they did, because in just a few minutes, hundreds and thousands of ants came in that room. And they went to the bottom of the table, and they came right up to the water. And you couldn't see the tub or the table legs because they had it literally covered. It is crawling alive with ants. Well, what were they going to do? They couldn't swim or couldn't fly. The scientists, they were wondering, too. You're wondering, aren't you? Well, I won't tell you then. I'll wait till Saturday night. No, I won't do that. So what they did, finally they started leaving. But they left and went over to the wall, and they came up the wall. And they came right over that cake. And they zeroed in on that cake, you know, and began to fall off on the cake. 3 foot from the ceiling. And in just a few minutes, all the ants a while ago that was from the water down, they were from up down to the water. They literally covered the cake and the 3 legs right down to the water. But now they could not fly. And they can't swim, and especially the mouthful of cake. No. Now what were they going to do? The scientists were really wondering. They were really, they couldn't hardly wait to find out, just like you. You can't hardly wait to find out what the ants did. Because now here they're little insect that the Bible says, hey, you lazy folks, go to the ant, you can get some wisdom. So the scientist says, okay, let's have it. Well, what those ants did, they made a bridge of themselves. One would grab a hold of the table leg with his hind legs and fall out in the water, you know, and the other one would come out and he'd grab him by his hind legs and by that one and that one by that. And finally, the last one, when he fell over, he grabbed the rim of the tub. And in a matter of an hour or so, there wasn't one crumb left in that room. And the scientist, red-faced, had to admit that those little guys, now they had learned why those little guys got their name in the Bible. Because they're industrious. When they set their hearts to do something, or minds, or whatever, when they set themselves to do something, they get it done. Now, do we? Really? Well, you say, well, what can I do? I'm going along pretty good. How can I build up a will or a little more determination like the ant? Well, you know, it's got to start someplace. Maybe in our case, we'd like to start Bible studies. Or maybe some other feature of the service, you know. But now, especially Bible studies, since last year, nearly 85,000 fewer studies was conducted than the year before. So maybe that's what we'd like to do. Well, you know, it may be that some talk, or maybe a demonstration, maybe a drama, or maybe a discussion you had with one of your brothers or sisters, or read in one of the publications, got you to thinking. It starts in the mind. In fact, if you turn to the book of James, we find here in James chapter 1, verses 14 and 15, something that the half-brother of Jesus said that will help us. You know, I guess if it wasn't for Hebrews, I never could find James. Hebrews is a pretty good-sized book. It's easy to find it, you know. So James is right after it. So we should be at James now, chapter 1. Verse 14, it says, "But each one is tried by being drawn out and enticed by his own desire. Then the desire, when it has become fertile, gives birth to sin. In turn, sin, when it has been accomplished, brings forth death." Now we know this is talking about bad things. And if you let your mind dwell on something bad long enough, it's a known fact it's going to happen. You'll do it. So it starts in the mind, doesn't it? And wouldn't it be true that the opposite of this would be true? If you let your mind dwell on good things, or on something you're trying to accomplish, or a task, or building up zeal in this matter, for example, if you let your mind dwell on that enough, you'll find a way to do it, because Jehovah God will help us. So, brothers, it starts in the mind. It starts with our thinking. You know, say a man's driving down the road and he happens to come to an intersection. There's a bank where they said, "Hey, I believe I'll rob the bank today." I hadn't thought about that, but I believe I'll go rob the bank. It doesn't happen that way, does it? No, but some bank robbers are planned 10 and 12 years in advance. It's something that's been planned and thought out and schemed, just like it says here in James. But the same would be true, brothers, to the reverse, to do good things. And then it'll become fertile and bring forth life to us. For example, maybe in most every congregation there's some little old sister or brother that's been faithful for many, many years. And they have no education. There's no one left to take care of them with their family. They're dead or gone. And they may get some little assistance from the state or from Social Security or whatever they're able to do. They're getting up in years. They have very, very little of the material things of the world. They're just able to get by. No automobile. This little old sister will say, little old sister, she could never explain to you about 1914. Or maybe some of the shallower things than that. She can't do it because when she came up, she got no education, and maybe her mother died and she had to raise a house full of children since she was the oldest girl, which has been the case many times. But you know, it's interesting, when you come to the Kingdom Hall, the first one's the door to get in is this little sister. And anytime you meet for service, the first one's there is that little sister. You wonder sometimes how in the world she got there. Just how did you get here, sister? You're first. Always. Some special feature of the service, you're here. Some regular feature of the service, you're here. So one night, this little sister walked up to her at the Kingdom Hall. She says, "By the way, I'd like for you to meet my Bible student." "Well, nice to meet you, Miss Bible student." Next week she comes, she says, "I'd like to meet my other Bible student." You say, "Well, hello, Miss Other Bible Student." You get to thinking, that's two. Next week she brings two strangers with. She says, "I'd like to meet you a couple of my Bible students I'd like for you to meet here." In your mind, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That really makes us think. Here, we've got a pretty good education. We've got a car. We've got pretty good clothes, or clean at least. We've got a job. We make a little money. We have a little bit of this world's means. And we don't have a Bible study. Why? You say. You say, why? This little old gal here has nothing. And here she's introduced me so far to 4 Bible students. I wonder how many more she's got. That really makes us think, doesn't it? Now, why can't I have at least a Bible study? What is it she's got that I don't have? What is it she's doing that I'm not doing? You know, in Matthew, if you'd like to open your Bibles there to Matthew chapter 5, it's got us so stirred up, we went home after the meeting tonight, and we began to talk this thing over with the family, showing how sometimes this is how it gets us going and reaching out for greater zeal and determination to get the work done. In verse 14, it reminds you of the Scripture as you talked to her and watched her. She walked off introducing her students to everybody else. Jesus says, "You are the light of the world. A city cannot be hid when situated upon a mountain." So here he's telling us, as well as this little sister, that you're the light of the world. You're to let your light shine. Like it says, a city can never be hid on top of a mountain. It could be seen for hundreds and hundreds of miles. But it goes on, it says, people light a lamp and set it not under the measuring basket, but upon the lampstand, and it shines upon all those in the house. So here's a person that's taking advantage of their light, and they're letting everybody within the house benefit from their lamp. They don't set it under a basket where no one can benefit from it. It would be silly. But they set it so everybody can benefit, can see and can use the light. So it goes on, it says, "Likewise, let your light shine before men, that they may see your fine works and give glory to your Father who is in the heavens." So this is what the little sister was doing. And so this is what we have to do. It makes no difference how little that light we might have or able to have, like this little sister. And by the way, this little sister I'm telling you about, she introduced to her congregation 36 new publishers. We just got to 4. But 36, that little sister, no education, no car, probably maybe 3 or 4 dresses and a couple pair of shoes is all she owned at her name. And that's what she did. And you know how? Right there. Remember, brothers, Jehovah God is blessing our effort. It doesn't mean that you got to go out and help get 36 people in. It may mean a lot of us have never helped anyone to come in. But it didn't mean we weren't out there trying. So that's what we're to do. Just let our light shine. Turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 4. And we'll find something else here you'll appreciate. Of course, one of the first scriptures I ever learned was 2 Corinthians 4:4, that God, the God of this system is Satan the devil. But that's not what the chapter is about. The chapter is about our service. As it brings out in verse 1, our ministry. So it goes on in verse 3, it says, "If now the good news we declare is in fact veiled, it's veiled among those who are perishing, among whom the God of this system of things has blinded the minds of the unbelievers, that the illumination of the glorious good news about the Christ, who is in the image of God, might not shine through." So here we find of how this corresponds with Matthew 5. But now, the devil he's really blinded the minds of a lot of people. It's as if he had taken a piece of tar paper. You got a roll in the back room back there. There's no way to see light through that old thick piece of tar paper. And some of the people in our neighborhood, you'll have to say, they've got some tar paper in front of their eyeballs, haven't they? They can't see the sun with it up. It's so thick. So the old devil, he's really got them blind. But now if we can chop away at that, and it may mean going back and being run off, and going back and being asked to leave, going back and maybe being asked, well, what in the world are you doing here? You know? It's like one time this little brother, he's working the territory, and he went to this house and knocked, and the woman found out who he was. She swung at him. He ducked right quick and got out of there. Well, the next time he worked the territory, what did he do? Go on to the next house? That's what we do, right? How many times have I gone with publishers, and you too, and they say, buddy, I guarantee I'm not going to get that house. They kicked me off the porch last time. You can get it if you want to. I'm not going back there. And they wouldn't go back. You couldn't take a 2x4 and make them go back. Well, he went to the next house, then went to the house the second time, and he might have been a few butterflies, because he remembered. If he hadn't have been quick, she'd popped him, good one. He knocked on that door, and she came in the door and saw him, and guess what she did? She swung at him again. He ducked again, and he left again. That's 2 times. The third time he went back, knocked, she swung, he ducked, and he left. 3 times. The 4th time he went back, he got all ready, got all loose, And just in case, you unbutton his button in case he had to go right quick, it wouldn't pop the button off his coat, So he went up and knocked and got all ready. She said, young man, what in the world have you got? 3 times I threatened to knock your block off, and you've come back here again today? Okay, come on in. I'll listen to you. I'll give you 3 or 4 minutes. Started to study with her. The next week he came back to continue that study and found all of her idols and things in the garbage can out front. She became a sister. See? So it shows that he was determined to crack away at that old piece of thick tar paper the devil put around her head. Well, it goes on here. In verse 5 says, for we are preaching not ourselves. See, now that makes a difference. We're preaching not ourselves, but Christ Jesus is Lord. That means we've got to go. And ourselves as your slaves for Jesus' sake. For God is he who said, let the light shine out of darkness. And he has shone on our hearts to illuminate them with the glorious knowledge of God by the face of Christ. Now, what we need to do, if we just keep chopping away at that old tar paper, it might be one day we knock a little hole in it. And they can see a little light come in through that hole, In fact, what it's going to take to remove the veil is found right. You just take your finger and go right to the top of that page, right up above chapter 4 to chapter 3, verse 16. See verse 16? It says, but when there's a turning to Jehovah, the veil is taken away. So now this is what this little old sister did. She let her light shine to everybody. Made no difference. And finally, they were turned toward Jehovah, and finally that piece of tar paper or whatever, it was removed. Well, what did that cause? Well, in verse 18, it says, and all of us, while we, with unveiled faces, reflect like mirrors the glory of Jehovah. All right, so now you might say, we're like the moon. Now, if it wasn't for the sun, the moon would give no light because it reflects the light of the sun. All right, so now we might say Jehovah God's like the sun. We're the moon. We're reflecting his light. So that's what we do. We reflect that light that was given to us by God through Jesus Christ. And we do it by following in his example. So looking at it from that angle, it may help us then to see the need, to be more determined to get the work done, just like the little ant. So it could be said of Jehovah's Witnesses, there are only 2 kinds. Busy ones and dead ones. But now, is that the way it is with us? It's interesting as we read the various experiences about our brothers and sisters. I remember reading an experience of a sister named Susan Comstock. This was a sister and lived in New York City. At the time, she was about 25 years old, had cerebral palsy, could not walk or talk at all, laying flat of her back. She could only move 2 fingers on the right hand. The only thing she could move. But did you know Susan temporary pioneered for 3 months? That touches us in here, doesn't it? When have we done it last? And she averaged, as the report goes, she averaged 81 79.7 hours. Now, isn't that something? And I don't see anyone in here that's anywhere close to the physical condition of Susan. In fact, we could probably put all of our problems together, and they wouldn't mount up to the problem that Susan had. You say, how in the world did she do that? And it's not all. She averaged 109.7 magazines for 3 months, 1, 2, 3. She had 18 return visits, and she conducted 3 Bible studies. She could not walk nor talk. That gets you, doesn't it? And you wonder how. And that's not all. She took part in the ministry of the theocratic school every time her turn came. Now that really got you, didn't it? And look at us, able-bodied. Sure, we've got our problems. That's why we all come down and hurt together to meetings. We don't stay home hurt by ourselves. We come down and hurt with everybody else. So, and here we are, all in pretty fair condition, some in good condition. And how do we measure up to Susan? Well, she had that determination, brothers. She did something the ants couldn't do. So Susan really impressed me when I read that about her. And I'm sure it has you, but the thing is she could move these 2 fingers, and she had an electric typewriter. Oh, you say, that's different. Oh, sure, that's different, you say. But can you imagine the effort that Susan put forth to move these 2 little fingers to average typing 81.7 hours a month for 3 months? Can you? You talking about some effort. And then when her time came to be on the theocratic school, she typed her talk out, and 2 sisters delivered it for her at the Kingdom Hall and brought back the counsel and commendation. Don't your heart go out to her? Because that gal has got determination like nobody's business. More than the ants got. So doesn't it make us think? You know? Now, if Susan could do that, then I could improve. And brothers, I'm encouraging you to, because it seems like throughout the organization now that there's a feeling of apathy. There's a letdown. Oh, don't worry. It didn't come in September 75, so it's going to be 10, 15 years now. And some of our brothers really put their hearts on September 75. And brothers, that was a mistake, and now everybody knows it. It's a mistake. You didn't really know when it was going to come. Nobody knows. The Watchtower Society does not know when the end's going to come. And the Bible plainly tells us that. If you don't believe it, write society and ask them, brothers, when the end's going to come? If you don't believe it. So see, a lot of brothers did. I know of a brother that his wife, who's not in the truth, back about 5 years ago, he kept harping on 75, see, being the end. Of course, now this got a lot of us in trouble. He got harping about 75 being the end. She says, listen, I've heard enough of that stuff. You really believe it's going to come in 75? He says, absolutely. She says, okay, if it don't come in 75, will you walk to my mama's house? He lives in Jacksonville, and her mama lives in California. He says, I'll do it. I'll do it if it doesn't come in September 75. So about October 75, he began to count up how many days it's going to take him. 47 he'd figured walking. He was going to do it. And he should have. But it happened a few weeks before she moved to Jacksonville. The Lord provides us something, I don't know. But anyway, but that was 14 miles away, and he walked it. He walked it. Brother Schroeder says they call it around Bethel the 75 Blues. And I hope no one in this congregation's got the 75 blues. But if we have, we can really benefit from our discussion tonight about the ant and about the will and determination to get something done. So, brothers, we hope that we'll do it. So, it's sure nice to be with the congregation. We've looked forward to it, and we know we'll have a big week. I guess you still got some territory needs covering at the tracks or whatever it is. We'll do that. And we'll meet at 9 each morning. Is that the time we'll meet, brother? 9 and 1:15? Okay. So we want to really support the week's activity. And I'd like to tell you something in case I forget in the morning. Of course, with tracks, you don't work together too much. We'll knock around a little bit, but it's best to work alone where you can get your territory covered. But I'll never ask you to get a house. I'll get every one until you say you want one. So don't think I'm trying to be hoggish. I just don't want you to ever feel like I'm putting you on the spot. Used to, it's kind of like that way. Some of the older circuit overseers back in years, I know. I imagine Brother Brown knows too. I went with a brother one day, a circuit overseer, and scared to death of him. I mean, scared to death. So I went with him, and I was wondering, any minute, I was waiting a minute for him to say, I want you to get the first house. I'd done it, but I'd been, And so finally, we walked up on the porch. He didn't say anything. He just went ahead and knocked. I said, hot dog. Well, I'm so glad. I was just about to die. Now I know, see, that he's going to get it. So I just backed off and I was going to really enjoy this. I was so relaxed then, And so he knocked again. I sure was hoping that someone would come because, the next house then would be mine if we worked it that way. And I just prayed somebody to come while he was there. And so finally I heard two big old feet coming. Room, room, room. Sound like it about a 13-footer at least coming down there. And so the door handle opened, and I figured it frightened the brother too. Because as soon as that door handle opened, that door, he said, you get it, Brother Thompson. And it really put me on the spot. And I swore off right then I would never put anybody on the spot, and that's what I mean. So if we get to go out and get a few doors tomorrow, well, I'll never ask you to work. I mean, not just with tracts, with the presentation either. So I want you to feel free to support the week's activity, and Jehovah God will bless our efforts. And we'll enjoy service. And so that's the way I feel about the service. It's the most unusual, uncommon thing I've ever done in my life. In fact, I had a lot rather dig ditches than go and knock on doors. You thought you were a dud, didn't you? You thought you were the only one in here felt that way. No, we all feel that way, brothers. We all feel that way. So that being the case then, we want to make service as enjoyable as we can. So we'll take our time as we go from door to door. We'll enjoy the sunshine, listen to the mockingbirds, the blue jays, or smelling the flowers or whatever. If you have a problem you'd like to talk about or something, we'll just back up against this oak tree here and we'll stand there and we'll talk about it. I won't run you up and down the street like Armageddon's going to come in 15 minutes and we got to get 75 houses. He'll find us busy. That's the main thing. So that's the way service should be, brothers. And if we can make service that way, then we'll look forward to opportunities to go. But as long as there's this chore, and we just dread it because of all we got to do, well, then we're not going to go. We'll come up with all kinds of excuses to get out there. And I know, and you know too, because we've done it. So we want to enjoy it. And that's the way it'll be. Now, if it's pouring down rain tomorrow, I won't run you up and down the street and give you pneumonia, getting wet and sloshing into people's front house, in their front rooms, and getting mud all over their pretty, beautiful white carpets and all that. They think we're off up here anyway, don't they? So if you go and do that, it's going to remove all doubt. That'll mean we really are off up here. if we do that. So we shouldn't do that. So if it's raining in the morning then, write out a list of the people we can call on, return visits. Then those people are familiar with us, see? We can go back there expecting us because we have been there before. And then we can go in, sit on the porch or whatever, and they know and understand. But really, it doesn't do the organization any good whatsoever to go tramping around in the rain thinking you're trying to prove something to somebody. You're proving something to somebody, all right. So we just want to do that, It's like sometime went to this gate with a brother, and here a sign says bad dog. He said, come on, let's go on in there. Lord take care of us. Said, brother, Lord, I'm not going to put him to the test. If you want to call on the dog, it's all right with me, because I've seen too many of my faithful brothers eaten apart by dogs. So Jehovah, he expects us to have some sense when it comes to that. A little something up here. He expects us to have something up here. If you don't have anything up here, you're going to let the dog eat you up sure enough. You need something. So it is with other features of the service. So we want to enjoy our service. So we hope that you can make it tomorrow. Any question about the program for the week? Saturday afternoon about, about 1 o'clock, 1:15, we'll have the Pioneer meeting here at the Kingdom Hall, if that would be all right. And that includes temporary pioneers, too, if you have any this month. All right? Anything else? Any question you have? Brother Brown?
On the program for Thursday night, is there going to be the new things learned and the slides, or is it just going to be new things?
Just new things learned in a talk. It'll be an hour and 15 minutes, as it always is. The slides and all that will be Sunday at the regular time, whatever. I don't know what, you have your meeting at 10 o'clock?
10 o'clock.
The slide will be your regular program, except a closing talk. Anything else? Okay. In fact, you probably always wonder where I'm from. We used to when we get a new circuit overseer or something, and so we're from Florida, my wife and I, from Pensacola, Florida. Now that settles you down on that. I worked at the paper mill most of my life. And that lets you know what we worked, what I worked. We always wondered, I'm sure you are too, so why not tell you? And we've been in the pioneer work since 1963. Now, the rest of the week, we can talk about you, because you found out about us. And it's nice being with you folks. So if nothing else, why don't we stand, since I've run us over a couple minutes. We'll stand and close our meeting with prayer.